Hi all, thanks for joining. Today we'll be talking about our user-centered design thinking webinar. I am Maeve Donovan. I'll be your leader for the webinar today, and thank you all for waiting. Let's dive right in. So today we're going to go through several different points. We'll start off with the introduction and background, get you a little information about myself, then dive right into what is user-centered design thinking and what is the value. We'll move into how to conduct user research and interviews, building an illustrative user persona, designing for the needs of the user, and then finally measuring success, and wrapping up with some question and answer time. So first things first, who am I? Like I said, my name is Maeve Donovan. I'm a senior technical product marketing manager here at GoodData, and I've been with GoodData for about 2.5 years now. With that, I bring my experience from the services team as a former implementation manager, so hands on the ground building data products for net new customers. My time with the customer success team, so helping engage our current customers and helping them to grow and monetize and build out and improve current data products and future data products. And now most recently moving towards our net new team, so understanding the needs of the consumer today. So diving right in. What does user-centered design thinking mean? First off, I know that's a mouthful. We are combining here user-centered design and design thinking, and there's a reason for that. I think there are aspects of both that really lend themselves to each other to create a real holistic view of how you create and how you use data products for the best possible use. So this first definition here is around user-centered design. And what it is an iterative design process. And iterative is a key word here, in which designers focus on their users and their needs in each phase of the design process. Whereas design thinking is a nonlinear, also iterative process that teams use to understand the users, challenge their assumptions on them, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and test. Like I said, there are slight differences, but they really meld together well to create one holistic view of ways to incorporate the process and the end needs of the user. So why are we talking about this? Why are we doing this? Why should we care? All of us obviously have data and data products in some shape or form, and we provide access to end users. Why do we need to do anything else? Well, one of the first things is dashboards need meaning really to encourage use. If we are speaking in the traditional dashboard sense, just posting numbers up to a static page often doesn't lead to continued use and long-term users, nor high levels of engagement. Another thing to make note of is end users are not always business users. As the relevance of accurate and real-time data becomes pertinent across all industries, we have to be understanding of the fact that not every end user will have a background in data science, will understand SQL queries, anything along those lines. So we need to make sure that even though they have different needs, all of those are being addressed, because with data, real-time data in the hands of more and more users, more accurate and more measurable decisions can be made. Like I say there, a variety of needs coexist, so do those variety of users. And then moving on, dashboards without proper UX and product approach often lead to churning. Harkening back to that first point, we often have clients say, well, I have data, I have all the data that they need. Why aren't they using it? One of the reasons why is often if we're not putting it in an approach that mirrors how they already work or answers their first hard-hitting questions, they're not going to spend more time to try and dig through and figure out what else there is within that data product. And then finally, driving sales through attention to expected results rather than only displaying static information is a huge boon. We've seen this with customers of our own who, once they really dive into this design thinking and user-centered design and build for their end user at every step of the process, see higher engagement, higher use of the product, and greater returns year over year. So how do we get there? Obviously, we all want that shiny North Star metric of greater returns, higher stickiness, everything along that lines. But there are three major steps that we go through first. The first one being user research and interviews. And then we take that knowledge and move into building a user persona. Finally, using the knowledge from the preceding two steps, we design for the user's needs. I want to recall back, though, to those definitions. This is an iterative process. Each time we do another research and design, we tweak it and understand through feedback to make sure that we are updating and keeping accurate those research information as well as that persona. Because needs of users change over time, and with a diverse group of users, there'll be a variety of needs that need to be accounted for. Okay, first things first, user research. If we don't know who's using the product, we're failing from the start. Building just to build, while it can bring innovation, often leads to missing the mark on the usership side for a start. So on the right here, you'll see a list of questions that I like to go through as a starting point when I'm doing user research. Taking a step back here, I will note that I do understand it's not always realistic to have user interviews. When possible, they are a great resource, and I highly encourage you to start a feedback loop with your end users so that you do have that accessibility to their wealth of knowledge from both their experience within any data product that you may have or from others. So you can gather kind of every possible scrap of information. So with that in mind, these user research questions are most often for in-person or, for now, Zoom interviews, questionnaires, things along those lines. But one important one that I think often gets skipped to start with is, who are you? What are your goals? Where do you start each day? What's your current process? This is really important to understand what the pain points are in their current process to ensure that those aren't repeated, whether it's with a different product and you're alleviating it with your new product, or it's within your current product and you're trying to rebuild. So making sure that those are highlighted and addressed systematically. The next part is, what are the bright spots in what you're doing already? What makes you say, yes, that's how it should be working? What makes your life easier? Because those should not be left behind. We've seen prior companies go through and decide we're building a new product, scrapping absolutely everything. There'll be no similarities. And when they get to delivering the new product, although it might have great functionality and features and be bright and shiny, customers feel lost. They feel like what they thought they knew and where they could execute well is no longer there, and often feel like it's no longer a product for them. So making sure that any of those bright spots seen in the original product within the original workflow are mirrored within the new design. It's really important to understand how the end user success is measured beyond just how we measure the success of the product, which we'll dive into further later. If we understand this, we understand how to be able to help deliver value to meet those measurements. And then one thing I like to do is understand what are the 3 steps that the user takes before interacting with the data and after interacting with the data. If any or all of these steps can be implemented within the data product, there's a huge win there. You're consolidating the amount of work the end user needs to do, the amount of locations they need to go to, and also the amount of locations the data needs to go to, which often leads to a more cohesive source of truth and that single source of truth that we're all looking for in data products, and allows there to be a more clear data flow as well, so that there aren't differing definitions and ways of calculating. And finally, what would make your life easier? Always great to ask. Always want to make sure that the end user feels like they have a hand and a say in what the end product is. With that, we'll dive into the user persona. So user persona, this should look familiar to most of you. Looks pretty similar to a resume. So it's taking everything that we learn within that user research and putting it into a profiled resume of sorts, and understanding each persona. There may be one persona for a data product. There may be several, but it's important, if there are several, have distinct personas and understand the differences between them. When trying to build for multiple personas as one, you get a lot of mix of different needs and information that don't mesh necessarily. And because of that, you end up building for no one in the end. A data product for everyone can be great, but it has to address that everyone means multiple people, not just one persona and conglomerate. So here you'll see, high-level goals. This is important. This needs to be in every persona. What their frustrations are. So those pain points that we talked about, a little bit about themselves and their motivation, and what motivates them and why, how they work, in what ways. Are they within the product often? Are they only visiting it once a day? Do they visit it only in the morning? Do they only need it when it's urgent? Things along those lines are important to have in your user persona, and this should always be on the top of mind whenever designing. So once we have that persona, we move into designing for the user. So from those user research questions, we know how the user interacts with the data right now. And what we do at this step is understanding what data we have. Are all of the questions that the user asks as they go through their day-to-day flow and data product able to be answered with the data currently? If so, great, we check that off and make sure that at each step of this flow that we've mapped out through those user research journeys and persona mapping has data to correlate or to match out and tie out those answers. If we don't have that data, the next question is, okay, great. Can we figure out a calculation from the data that we have in its raw form to answer that question? If so, great, and have to make sure that that calculation aligns with how the end user does their calculation and make sure that is put across, again, that single source of truth across the organization. So there's that one definition. By making sure that we're understanding that the data is there and data is present and matching it with the questions, we're ensuring that the user is getting out what they need from the product and not just, again, overwhelming them with the data on a dashboard and saying, it's all there, you can go and see it. This allows them to have a starting place, understand the questions that they ask first, have those answered, and then be able to dive deeper and get into that granular data, for example, if they need to. So here you'll see on the screen a couple different ways of representing how we design for the user with our data. On the far left, you'll see this analytical designer at GoodData, which allows the user to go on an ad hoc basis and design their own reports and insights, anything from a bar chart to a line graph to an area chart, as you see here, to heat map, to really understand and get a hands-on experience with diving into the data. This is an option to show or surface to all customers or not at the company's discretion. In the center here, you'll see our dashboards. Like I said previously, some customers just need right across the top those headline KPIs, understand, are we doing all right? Maybe it's first thing Monday morning, I have to see, is everything still moving forward? Is the house on fire? That's what you see with those first KPIs, and then having the option of those additional dashboards and insights to drill into and drill across. And then finally on the far right here, you'll see, designing for mobile. If we know that the end user from their persona is someone who's on the go always, who might be out on field sites, but needing that data, we want to be keeping that in mind when we're designing. So making sure we're still answering those questions that they have, but in a way that is more accessible to them. So in this case, a large interactive map may not be the best option just because that often doesn't render the best historically on mobile devices. So we always want to make sure we have in mind how, where, when those users are accessing the data. So diving further into designing for the user, let's talk about wants versus results. So this is a big thing that you have to learn, and this comes through, again, that iterative process of understanding your user. With that, you want to make sure you can parse what the user wants versus what they actually need from it. So we hear it a lot, I want a simple workflow. I have everything everywhere and it's chaotic. One approach may be to, just make everything kind of stripped down and basic, or make everything one location for all pre-work and follow-up. So harkening back to that question that we asked in the user research of what are your 3 preceding and 3 follow-up steps that you have once you interact with the data. If you can incorporate those, like I said, into the data workflow, into the data product, you're ensuring that the customer doesn't feel scattered, but they feel like they can invest all of their time and effort in one place and get real results because of that. The next want we hear a lot of times is, I need updates that relate to me. I get all of these pings, on some machine, on some products, and doesn't matter to me. It's someone else's update, but it goes to everyone. Or I don't get updates. I have to go and check there and I'm busy and I just don't have the time. So one thing that, we design around is making sure there's KPI alerting that is, set up on a person by person basis and updated, over time. So maybe a problem area no longer becomes a problem area. They can switch off that alert and move it to another area. So this alerting would be for, threshold. If we cross a certain percentage of sales, or if we have a certain percentage of change over time, great places to have those alerting. In addition, scheduling emails. So whether it's every day at the start of your day or start of your week, you get that PDF version of your dashboards in your email. It's a great way to easily say, if you're on the train commuting into work, you can read over that, make sure everything's okay, and know where you start and stand within the day. Or maybe it's at night after you've had a long day and that's scheduled out to the rest of your team so that they can understand what the changes from the day are. So making sure that pertinent updates means more than just one answer. It's a holistic answer there for the user. Next, having custom reports. This is a big thing with a lot of our customers, is that they love being able to dive into the data even further than maybe what the standard dashboards allow. So harkening back again to that analytical designer that we discussed, surfacing that to end users so that they can feel like a power user. They can become a power user, and making it intuitive for them to use. And then finally on here, the wants and results. Some people want both high level and granular information. At times, some knee-jerk reaction would be to consolidate the information and make it more aggregated. But a lot of times that kind of middling approach helps no one. So again, going back to that, designing for everyone means a bit of designing for no one. So one way we approach this is, designing an executive summary always, so that all high-level information can be seen at a glance and address the needs of most people on a first pass. Then diving into another layer of detail with drilling. So a secondary dashboard that is attached to those insights and KPIs from that first page that addresses maybe another 20% of needs. And then for the people that need that granular information, they can continue drilling down through that workflow that we've established in that user journey and that user research and persona mapping to really get down to that granular information. So understanding that you can design for multiple people by including that tiering almost aspect of drilling in, down, and across. So where does this all fit? Here's a little bit of our process and that iterative process. Again, want to make note that it might not be shown in arrows, but there is always this iteration, and that's all from feedback. So you'll see within the UX portion, a lot of it, we have that user persona, user interviews, understanding the data, and then the UI is taking that all together and putting it into a prototype and testing it. Again, at each of these blue boxes, there's feedback, there's iteration. This is not a non-linear process for a reason. And even after everything has been built and deployed, there will be additional iterative processes to update and make better. So big key point here is have a feedback loop, both with your end users through user interviews, but also through understanding of how and when users are using your product. And understand also MVPs work for a reason, because we push it through this process and we iterate and make improvements each time. So you don't need to hit on every single need on the first go, because you will pick it up and pick up best practice for it as you move forward and continue this process. So what does success look like for this? We all have our North Star metrics. I know it's different for each department and group that it would be building a data product. So let's start with some ones right off the top. Daily active users. I know all of us are aware of what these are, but some things to drill into here are time and product and daily visits. How much time are your users spending in it? Especially what is their role within your company? So from GoodData, you can see user statistics and understand how much time they are spending and be able to sort by user and understand, are they visiting it once a day? Are they visiting it 4 times a day? And how does that impact how they're interacting with it? Another part of that is how many executions do they make? Are they going beyond just that first page? Are they drilling into the second page? Are they updating a report and refiltering it? Things along those lines really show when a feature or a part of the product is successful or not. If you have a section of the product on page 3 that has never been touched, well, maybe you might want to look, is anyone visiting page 3? Is there a built-in user flow to get you there organically? Or does a user have to go out of their way to access that information? Is it not readily available? Is it on the second page of scrolling? So these are always important notes. With that, understanding how many reports are built if you are surfacing analytical designer and GoodData for your users. These metrics really show your power users which, harkening back again to that iterative feedback loop, are your bread and butter for getting that information about what is working well, what's not. So paying attention to these metrics really help you find champions of your product. And then across the board, seeing what the increase in organic adoption is. So, are there increased number of users from your client side wanting seats within the data product? Are different departments requesting additional ones? This is also a great way to show success of the data product. So I know we've gone through a lot in a pretty quick amount of time. So I first want to thank all of you for sticking in and listening out. And with that, we'll be diving into a quick Q&A. So I know we have some questions lined up here, and I will dive right in. So the first one we have is this just for new products? Do you have to be building a product net new? I have several data products that I want to improve. Can I do this? So great question, first of all. And yes, although you can use this from starting from scratch, I think it is also so imperative to make sure that this is incorporated into existing products and existing development flows. We often, there is a want to put our heads down and focus on, delivering and sticking to a plan. But often if we don't look up and listen to our customers and, really make sure we're tying this back to that user persona and saying, does this really solve their needs? We start diverting away from the customer. So making sure that, if you're already in process of building out a product, making sure that you can add this in and making sure you're tying it back to that end user. If you're looking to redesign an existing product, making sure that you don't take the assumptions that you started with into that new product and question all of them so that you can be innovative and really address the user's needs in a new and unique way while bringing over the things that really helped, going back to that, bright spots, and leaving behind those that didn't serve the customer. So, this, in short, to answer your question, yes, it's new products, old products, redesign of products. So, it's applicable across the board. The next one is, what is one key thing that you would say you need to have in order to use user-centered design? So I think first of all is, if you'll bear with me, I'll probably say 3 instead of 1. One is that feedback loop that I talked about. Without feedback, you're designing within a vacuum. If you're not looking at the statistics of how the users are interacting, if you're not actively getting feedback from them, you're designing for what you think they might want without knowing what they actually want. So that's huge. And you'll see from experience great returns when you do incorporate that information actively and make the customer feel like they're a part of the product lifecycle. The second one is making sure that all parties that come to the table come with an open mindset and a creative thinking mindset. So one thing that's great within that research and user persona mapping phase is throwing every idea up on the board. When we're trying to figure out what questions the user is asking and how we solve those with the data, throwing everything up there and then not paring down before deciding to voice those ideas really helps bring that innovation and creativity. And then finally, iteration, making sure that you understand that you don't have to have all your ducks in a row every single time for every single sprint or push or launch, but that each time is a test, and small incremental changes are better than pushing off and waiting for one huge dump. Often from the end user perspective as well, because it's more easily ingestible. And, if you're only having small tweaks, it's easier to go through and give feedback on the small scale rather than having to, give feedback on a whole update across the board. Okay. And then finally, let's look at this last question. So who participates in user-centered design? That I love getting everyone involved. A variety of ideas and a variety of backgrounds definitely helps with this. Within GoodData, product managers handle this first and lead the design, the process. But it is meant to be collaborative, and you want to make sure that you have stakeholders from all different user groups so that their opinions and their understanding of the data and of the user flows are accounted for. So again, definitely thinking larger scale if possible, but I know it's not always possible. So trying to get as many different voices in as possible. Okay, I think that's the major questions that we have right now. But if there are ever any questions, please feel free to reach out. My contact information will be in this webinar as well. And we're always available through community, GoodData community. And if there are any other questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you all for the time today.